The students are tired, they're exhausted, and they feel that there's too much information being thrown at them, bombarded by a lot of information, while we, as on the other side, are trying to give them as much as possible to help them learn and become better learners. But the problem is that the students sit there for, I don't know, 3 hours a day, 5 hours a day, it depends on the kind of setting, and they do need some kind of break. They need to have some mental breaks to help them reinvigorate themselves, to refocus. And of course, when they are physically tired, they are mentally tired. We don't want them to reach this point. And of course, when they are tired, both physically and mentally, they're not really learning. So let's see how we can help them become better learners. The problem is that the students are suffering from limited attention span. And I say this with all the love I have to my students. Is it social media? Is it the pace of life? Their attention span is not what it used to be. I've been doing this job teaching, and I love it, for many years. And I've noticed that over the years, the students have become less and less able to consistently pay attention in class. And at the same time, there is information overload. And there's a lot of stuff being thrown at them, whether it's technology, whether it's how to write and how to read and how to do this and how to do that. So it's a problem. And we need to take a step back and think of the students and help them learn in a better way. To talk about this, I thought of bringing up a couple of theories as background information. The first one is the cognitive load theory. John Sweller in 1998 talked about this. He talked about how the students' working memory is limited. There is, a set a limit to their capacity to process information, to understand, and to digest what new information they're being given. Because of that, we need to be very careful and consider a few things. So when I went back and looked at this theory, I thought of these factors. These are the factors that lead to the cognitive load theory, lead to cognitive load for the students. Maybe we're all guilty of giving them some unrelated material, and we are leaving them alone to try to, connect the dots. Maybe there aren't enough clues. There isn't enough context to what we're doing, to what we're teaching. And maybe this is something we should all remind ourselves, that we need to give them some context. Even if the materials is a review of what they've done before or stuff that they should know, giving a little bit of context and clues will help them. Sometimes we distract them inadvertently, but when there is no integration between the tasks we do, we don't make connections between tasks, like a reading task connecting to a writing task, for example. And so they're distracted. They're splitting their attention. Am I doing writing or am I doing grammar? Well, you're actually doing them both, and maybe we need to tell them that. Sometimes we're doing things that are redundant or irrelevant. And thanks to COVID, I've been working very hard on this point precisely. And I leave the redundant or the irrelevant or the, let's say, matter-of-fact practice for them to self-practice on their own, outside class, at their leisure. And sometimes when we give them a task, we don't really focus on the need for imagination, getting their mind to wonder, getting their mind to question and to ask questions. I think if we try to do all these things and keep them in mind, maybe we can reduce the load on the students, the mental load. The other interesting theory is the famous affective filter hypothesis theory by Krashen. And I'm one of the people who really believe in this. And I've always thought that, although it's a metaphorical idea, but that like when the student's affective filter is up, they're not digesting, they're not willing to learn, they're not taking in any of the information. They're looking at me and sometimes they're actually nodding, but I don't think they're actually, the stuff is sinking in. So we want to make sure that the situation in class and the atmosphere lowers their affective filter. They are open and ready to learn, and they're willing to take in new stuff, whether challenging or average. Still, we want to make sure that the situation is ready, the atmosphere is ready, the stage is set for them to learn and acquire. Having mentioned these two theories as background, I would like to talk about now, what should we do? What should we do? Several things came to my mind as I was preparing this presentation. The famous check-ins that people talk about, at the beginning of class. And one of them, very famous in the literature, the idea of tell me about a rose and tell me about a thorn. Tell me about something positive that you've learned, something that left its mark on you, and tell me something that you feel still you're not 100% sure of, or you're having problems with, or it's difficult. So when you ask the students to do, this is an example of a check-in. Any form of check-in, and I'm going to mention this later, come back to it later, it gives the students voice. I was talking to my students the other day, and they were complaining about some other class, and they were saying that we don't get to talk. We want to talk. We want to share. And doing that relaxes them. Doing that lowers their stress and their anxiety level. They own their learning, so they're making decisions. I know this, I understand this, or I don't know this, and I need some more help. And of course, it's a way for us to acknowledge their contributions, and they love that. Thank you, Mohammed, for sharing this. Mona, this is great, interesting thought. And of course, it's a way to follow up on the areas of weakness. And the areas of weakness, or the areas or problem areas or difficulties, are a main reason for brain freezes or lack of understanding and stress, of course. They're less vulnerable when they share because they already have enunciated their fears, enunciated what they've learned, and the stress is reduced. So it's a better learning atmosphere and environment all around. And of course, students become passionate when we ask them about their feelings or what they have learned or what they have not learned. And of course, they buy in more, they invest more of themselves in the process of learning. Another way, another suggestion, in addition to check-ins, is, and I love this, of course, gamification. And you can gamify your class in any format, in any skill, whatever you're doing, whether you're teaching graduates or undergraduates, whether you're teaching writing or grammar, or listening or speaking, or a problem-based class. Gamifying your class is a win-win situation. First of all, the definition of gamification, taking something that is not a game, even something as mundane as outlining a reading, and adding gaming elements to it. What are the takeaways from this? Why is it a win-win situation for the students and the teacher? Of course, it gives them the skills to talk, to collaborate, to interact. And of course, it motivates them. The students love it. And I've seen my graduate students literally jumping up and down from their chairs, because they're earning a point or winning a prize or beating the other team. And wink, wink, we are dipping the bitter medicine, like grammar, for example, into honey. Yes, we are playing a game, but in reality, I am teaching you today about, for example, the noun clauses, which is quite boring for many people, and the best way would be to gamify it, or how to outline a passage, or how to write a summary. When the students compete and participate in a game, they exert effort, and then they see the reward. And when they see the reward, they relax, they calm down, they digest. They're more open to digesting these maybe difficult rules or seemingly boring material. So it's much needed. So what I would suggest is look for natural pauses. And I'm going to come back to this point, it's quite important, in your classroom, and insert a tiny little game, a short game, as a break, a mind break. Moving along, to self-reflection. We cannot hope to teach a class which lowers the students' affective filter and gives them a kind of, interesting, collaborative atmosphere that's fun and open to learning without self-reflection. And this can be your check-in at the beginning. It can be your bell ringer at the beginning, or it can be your end of class, or it can be in the middle as a break. You can ask them about 3 things you did well. Tell me about 3 things you did well last class or in today's class, and maybe 3 things you need to work on, and ask me a question. You can have them do the 3, or maybe just one of these at a time. I always like that, to do that, and I do it anonymously. I tell them, get out a tiny slip of paper and just ask me a question, any question, of course, hopefully related related to what we've been doing, and usually they do, or tell me something. Tell me something you're not very comfortable with, you need to work on, and they always, come up with something that they feel that they should be working. It gives me great insight and feedback into my teaching, to my own teaching. And it's a good little break between the, other stuff and other tasks. So how do we give brain breaks? Make sure you give the students a choice. Supposedly they have to summarize a text. Maybe you can give them a choice of maybe one group, if you'd like to first outline it. Another group, maybe watch a video about how to summarize, or maybe just read a little, handout or a PowerPoint. So just giving them, they're all going to summarize. They're all going to do the same task. But the idea of giving them a choice relaxes the students. Get them most of the time to collaborate and to communicate together. Groups, I'm for small groups of students, 2s, pairs, and 3s. I do not like large groups because they end up talking about in Arabic and about something else unrelated to what we're doing. But the collaboration relaxes them. They kind of like scaffold each other's learning, which basically reduces the mental burden on themselves trying to get through the task or answer your questions or whatever. The next thing is have them examine something, inquire. And I'm all for using visuals. The literature is full of the value of research about the value of visual learning. I'm talking about infographics, e-posters, even a PowerPoint, something that they can see to help reduce the load of reading on them. When they're faced with text, just blocks of text, it stresses them. Of course, they're not very good readers, and we know that. So let's try to help them read by doing something in the form of a visual, an infographic, a graphic organizer, or maybe transform the text into a graphic organizer. It helps them read and transfer their information into another document. And of course, the last thing is to create a product. Either adapt or create a product. The process of creation, when students collaborate together, they make choices. It actually encompasses all the 4 points I'm sharing with you on the screen. If you're going to have them create maybe a PowerPoint or create a page on their Google site, or create a product, they will be doing all the 3 other things. You're giving them choice. They're collaborating, and they're inquiring, and they're using visuals to transfer their learning. What is very interesting, and what I always thought about when I teach long stretches of hours, so I either teach a 3-hour block, now I'm teaching a 3.5-hour block, and it's a very long stretch, and they are exhausted. The students are exhausted. So I can see, I'm very cognizant of the fact that they are tired. They are exhausted, and I watch them and I monitor them. So I find that the best way to deal with this, because I don't want to lose them, okay? I don't want them to detach. I want them to keep on the task as much as possible. So I adapt my lessons on the fly when the students need a break. I mean, we finish something and I feel that they're tired. So tiny little break, a little game, grammar game, or a tiny spelling exercise, or a tiny vocabulary, matching vocabulary, whether it's on Kahoot or on Bamboozled or on anything, or maybe something on your PowerPoint slides, gets them to relax, and also gets them to be prepared for the next part of the lesson, the incoming part, which is another maybe big or important chunk of the class. I also, when I'm thinking of the strategies I'm going to do in class and the different parts of my lesson, I build in breaks. And I don't mean here by a break, stopping the class and asking the students to go out maybe for a break. There are breaks. I'm not talking about that today. I am talking about while they're still in class, the class is in session, but we have a little bit of time off. Okay, and usually it happens naturally when I'm planning my class and I make some task shifts. So we've written, now maybe we can speak. We've spoken a lot and discussed, but now we need to calm down, relax, and start reading something individually. So this idea of shifting, makes quite a difference for the students. Teamwork, I cannot forget the fact that teams always support each other and scaffold the learning of the students. And one last thing is also I found very interesting is the way I ask my questions. Of course, after doing this for many years, I've learned to better frame my questions, to give them context, because this is an information overload. When they stare at me with their eyes and they look at me with wide eyes and they don't understand, like, what is she talking about? This is, to me, quite disconcerting, because basically what I'm trying to do is help them, not overload them, not overburden them. So I've learned to better frame my questions and maybe have a little bit of a preamble and then hit them with the question. So we're talking about brain breaks. So what are we targeting? What do we want? We want the students to have some kind of hope. Oh, yes, I'm learning. Oh, yes, I'm able to understand. Oh, yes, I'm not lost. I am with you, my teacher. We want to know their thoughts. So any kind of brain break we give them, it's a way to get their thoughts. What do you think of, this task? What did you think of yesterday's quiz, for example? And we also want to target their feelings. The minute they start expressing their feelings, they relax. Their affective filter is down. They're more open to learning. It's as if you're in a race and you stop and catch your breath and you're ready to continue and move on. And I also like to target their values. So every now and then I bring up the idea of academic integrity. It's a kind of a brain break, but it's like a discussion. Do you think this is acceptable? We started talking these days because AI is, on everybody's mind in academia. What do you think of AI? Do you have AI? Do you use AI? Do you think it's acceptable to use AI for your assignments? Things like that. And we start talking about different types of AI that already exist, like, for example, spell check and grammar check and Grammarly and things like that. So we want to know things from the students, get them relaxed and connect with them. Here is my most important slide for the day. And these are the kind of activities, I thought I'd put them together, that allow us to actually engage in giving students brain breaks. Notice the use of polls and surveys as a wonderful brain break, and to quickly assess the students about, a topic or
سلام خانم دکتر. حالتون خوبی قربان شم.
Could I ask you please to mute yourself? Thank you very much. So to assess the students' learning indirectly. Another thing is basically chunking. So we all know that we are ahead of a new module, for example, and it's quite demanding, and it's about a topic that's quite deep and heavy. We do not want to give it to them at one go or over 2 days. Why not over a week? Why not chunk the readings and chunk even the videos, give them smaller videos to prepare them for that heavy topic that you're going to bring up in class, which is part of your syllabus. And this leads me to the brain priming. Chunking and brain priming are related together. Chunking is dividing up the material in little bits and pieces to be easily digestible by the students. And brain priming is to mentally prepare them for what's coming ahead by it's like giving them a heads up. That's a brain break in itself. So if you give them a 2-minute video about the topic, about the theme of, for example, emotional intelligence, you're priming their brain, you're preparing them mentally for the load that's coming up, for the material that's coming up. And of course, I love think alouds and storytelling. Think alouds are part and parcel of all my classes. Students engage in think alouds to talk about how they will summarize a reading. Think aloud, how will they outline a text? Think aloud, what should they include on their PowerPoint presentation when they give a presentation? I cannot begin to tell you how useful it is, because if we go back to the first slide in my presentation today, and we said we want to not to inundate the students, we want them to express themselves, to have a voice. Think alouds are the best way to get them to engage and to lower their affective filter. They're taking a break. They're listening to others as they tell them, this is how I find the meaning of a vocabulary word in context, or this is how I start my summary, or this is how I outline the passage. It's a way to revise what you taught them. If they're successfully doing the task, they must have learned something from your instructions. But getting them to enunciate it and talk about it is very, very useful for the students. And it's also very useful for giving them some brain breaks. So part of brain breaks also is the technique of pausing in a class. And of course, when we were being trained, and I'm sure all of you share this, you're all experienced teachers, we were told you need to pause a little bit. Give the students time to think. Give the students time to, hear themselves think. So I pause a lot during my classes, and the students have learned over time that, now we need to calm down, not talk, and think for a minute. At the beginning, I used to tell them, all right, let's take a think. Let's have a think. And I get them to pause. And I don't know what's the word, but maybe just reboot, recycle what we're saying, instead of blurting out any answer that most of the time is really not the answer to the question I asked. So I require them to pause before even typing their answers or putting pen to paper. To give you an example, this semester I'm teaching listening, the listening skill, and they're supposed to watch videos and in a certain format and take notes. And every time I have them watch a video, they watch the video 3 times. Every time I have them watch the video, they basically are supposed to do this. The first time they watch the video, it's on silent. They just watch the pictures and the images, and they take notes. And then after that, I have them pause for a minute and think about what they just saw and what they have written on their notes. Then, after the full minute, and I respect the time and I put my watch right next to me, we watch the video for the first time ever with the audio. So it's the full experience. And they also take notes. At the end of the video, I'm talking about short videos, like 5 minutes, At the end of the video, we pause. We pause again, and I have them think and reconsider what notes they've taken. And then we repeat the process again for one last time. So I schedule thinking time in my lessons on purpose. And the students have come to, at the beginning, they didn't actually get it. But after a while, they've realized that it's a very valuable time for them to collect their thoughts, to start thinking of what they're going to do next, maybe, prepare what's coming next, to just relax, just calm down and relax. And if you train the students to do this, basically, you will find that the students learn how to adapt themselves to these valuable brain breaks or pauses. I'm almost finished with my presentation, leaving time for questions. This is my last slide. I just want to tell you that sometimes some teachers who may not be as experienced as you are, waste class time so that they maybe give the students a time to relax and not to be tired. But instead of doing that, we don't want to waste class time. Class time is very valuable. I've learned that from the COVID experience and teaching on Zoom. Instead, use brain breaks as a way to avoid fatigue and to reduce stress in class. These are my references, and thank you very much for being here today on a Friday, attending my presentation, and I'm ready for questions.
Thank you so much, Ms. Rania Jabr.